Hello, I'm over here, the short small person standing by the little painting. My name is Cassandra Heller and I have chosen the oil canvas painting done by Italian artist Giovanni Antonio Canal, and it is called View of the Molo. Please excuse me for looking a little rough at the beginning of that video. I wasn't planning on shooting that day, but here's a better picture of me. Oh, and the painting of course. Today I will be analyzing the elements that our artist Mr. Canal used in order to create this piece. Now, I'm not an expert, so I'll go ahead and I'll point out the most obvious ones that a beginner like me would be able to notice and recognize in the painting. So let's start with the element of line, and I'll first be talking about vertical lines as seen in the picture above. Now in class, our professor described these vertical lines as giving a very tense and anxious feeling, and even gave us the example of a jail cell. Now I'm not too sure what this could have been back in the days, but could it maybe have been something along those lines? Get it? Lines? I really didn't do that on purpose. Now the next lines we see are the horizontal lines of the boats and the shadows of the people. And horizontal lines represent calmness and relaxation. And that's exactly what these two objects are doing. Now the last lines we see are the diagonal lines that the people and the boats create. And diagonal lines represent movement. And that's exactly what the boats and the people are doing. The people are moving and walking one way, and the boats are moving in the ocean another way. Now we move on to our next element, shape. And the first shape that we see when we look at this painting is the actual geometrical shape of the buildings. Now the next actual shape we see are the organic shapes that the people create. And although they're very small, the organic shape is still included in this painting. So the last shape we see in the painting is the implied triangle shape. And in art, an implied triangle represents a religious or sacred symbol. Now in this painting, I drew a triangle around the palace. Maybe that's a religious or sacred palace there in Italy. Also, the boats on the bottom left corner create a triangle, and at the tip of the triangle, there is someone dressed in all white, and all white in religion represents purity. The next element is light, and as you can see on the left side near the palace, there's more light, representing that it is more important. And on the right side, on top of the big building, there is less light, signifying that it's less important. Using this same picture, I can talk about the element of value. Now on the left side where there's white clouds, this would be considered the highlight of the painting. And on the right side where there are dark clouds, that would be considered the darkest value of the painting. Now, referring to tint, shade, and tone, the sky blue would be a tint, the shadow of the boat would be a shade, and the gray sky would be a tone. Now, under the elements of color, there are three properties. Property number one is hue. In other words, hue is just the color. Now, the colors used in this painting are blue, red, and yellow, although it is mainly blue and there's very little red and yellow. Property number two is value. The high key value would be the blue, and the low key values would be red and yellow. Property number three, intensity. The sky blue is bright, and the gray sky is dull. Now, the palette used in this painting is primary colors, but like I said, mainly blue and some red and yellow. Also, there are very many neutral colors being used. Our next element is texture, and because it's a 2D painting, the only texture that's included is the visual texture. This visual texture is a texture that we know from experience. Now, if you look closely at the buildings, there's a design on them that gives them a rough texture. And on the top of the big building, there are some pointy, sharp things coming up from the top. So from experience, we know that the points would be sharp. Now, on a lighter side, if you look over at the ocean, it looks smooth. The next element is space, and as you can see on the left side with the boats and the people, there's overlapping. You can see diminishing size with the boats and the people as well. Now, linear perspective, the buildings and the floor all connect to the horizon line. The mathematical diminishing size, the buildings get smaller in the distance. Now, in the atmospheric perspective, the buildings begin to fade in the distance and there's a bluish white color in the sky. Finally, for our last element, movement. And in this painting, there's only implied movement. The people walking, the water moving, and even the clouds moving. Thank you for listening to me for 5 minutes straight. Now I'm off to pray for an A on this assignment. And as my fellow Italian artist Giovanni Antonio Canal would say, ciao. And if you didn't know what that means bye in Italian.